Powercat Game Day this Sunday. Postgame, Corey Dean, John Kurtz, Cole Manbeck from somewhere that's very sunny and nice outside. I'm kind of jealous of your background right now, Cole. That looks great.
We are at the lake, so I did have it facing the water and was really going to make everyone jealous, but there was too much of a glare, so we're just facing some tree lines, it looks like.
Well, it looks like a lovely place to celebrate a win. K-State comes from behind in the fourth quarter and knocks off Texas Tech 31-21. So multiple storylines in this one, guys. Not only is it a back-to-back wins for K-State, who seems to be positioning themselves well early on in the Big 12, but you get a win, but you got to win not in the way that you expected. I think K-State probably wins this one pretty easy if Skylar's playing at quarterback, but you lose a quarterback early in this one, and holy cow, did this team get young in a hurry. There's a lot of places. This was a pretty impressive performance. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, they really had to grind through a lot of adversity again. I mean, a lot like the Oklahoma game. And in that respect, you had not only an injury to Skylar Thompson, but I think another injury that really hurt them was losing Cooper Beebe, who's their right tackle. And that was pretty early in the game. I think it was on the play, in fact, where they had the fake field goal that they tried up there.
Yeah.
Fake field goal. I think it happened then, so it was really early in the game. And then Katori Levison's playing left tackle, and he's really struggling. And at one point, it's Carver Willis, who's a true freshman, at left tackle, and that's never a good position really to be in. You lose Skylar, still in control of the game, but then the momentum switches in the second half, and Texas Tech takes a 21-17 lead, and it did not feel very good at all at that point. And I think the play of the game to me really was Briley Moore with his catch and run down the sideline after that wound up setting up a touchdown. If you don't have that, I mean, all of a sudden you're in a real trouble spot with Will Howard needing some confidence, not being able to do much offensively. But he did enough, man. I mean, he was fine, and eventually that started to spark some things. They were able to find Deuce Vaughn some more to put the finishing touches on it, and they get out of there with a win. And I think Chris Kleiman said after the game it was a bigger win than Oklahoma, and I know you can shrug some of that off as coach speak, but I understand the point there. I mean, upsets happen in college football, and in particular in a year like this where it's, I think, going to be wackier than normal. You could write that off pretty easily if they had lost this game and say, well, stuff is going to happen like that. But now they backed it up with another win, and they did it with all those guys out, and they did it with the future of the program on full display. I mean, it makes you feel pretty good about where things are going.
Yeah, John, they faced a lot of adversity yesterday, and I thought they handled it really well. And when Texas Tech in the second half really got going offensively and got into their tempo and moving the ball and scored 3 touchdowns in their first 3 possessions, it didn't look good for K-State. And I'm with you. I thought the Briley Moore play was the biggest play in the game because I didn't feel like K-State could probably sustain a drive going down the field. I felt like they needed some sort of explosive play, and they connect with Moore and they get that 66-yard passing play and get the lead and get some momentum back on their side. And then very similar to Oklahoma, the defense in the fourth quarter, the last 3 drives, they hold Texas Tech scoreless, interception, punt, and turnover on downs. And so they stepped up again in the fourth quarter and played well. And, Will Howard, he was fine. I think he's what we expected from a true freshman. He looked like a true freshman out there. He had some throws that he missed on. But he's a true freshman. He's 18 years old playing in his first game and comes in unexpectedly when Skylar goes down. To me, this was Deuce Vaughn's most impressive game because we've talked about it on PowerCat Game Day. Teams are going to start targeting Deuce Vaughn to take him away. They know how explosive he is. And when you got a true freshman and a quarterback, I mean, you would think they're going to be targeting to take away Deuce Vaughn even more at that point, and they couldn't stop him. And so he was phenomenal in that game. A lot of freshmen and sophomores played. By my count, they had 10 freshmen play on the offense or defensive side and 10 sophomores play on the offense or defensive side. So you got 20 guys that are kind of the future of the program that played significant snaps in that game. I think you feel pretty encouraged by that. And you just escape with the win and you move on, and you hope Skylar Thompson's not out long-term and that you can get him back. And if you look at the schedule, you've got TCU next weekend. That's going to be very difficult with Gary Patterson game planning for a true freshman quarterback and Will Howard, who I would expect to play. We don't know the injury severity of Skylar, but it'd be surprising when you see him in a sling if he's going to be able to be back for that game. And then you got the bye week, and then you got KU. So if it's not a season-ending thing for Skylar Thompson, you could potentially maybe, escape, get past KU, sit him for 3 or 4 weeks and maybe have him back for the stretch run. And that's me optimistically thinking, not knowing what the severity of that is.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a good sign with him with a sling on the sideline in a T-shirt after that. That was a wicked hit. And I think that John actually asked Coach Kleiman in postgame about whether he thought that was dirty. And I kind of tend to agree with Coach. I don't think so, but man, he lands full on that throwing shoulder, and there was no question he was leaving that game.
Yeah, I thought, both of the quarterback hits were iffy. I mean, I'll say it like this. The Khalid Duke hit, I did think was late, and I did think was low,
sure.
And that's a pretty bad combination. Now, when people want to take it to the next step of saying, like, hey, that's a dirty hit,
right?
I don't know. I did think there was a lot of chippiness on both sides. There was a lot of headhunting going on, and K-State was a huge part of that. So I think it was a byproduct of that within the game. It did feel like the hit that came to Skyler was in a lot of ways retribution. I know Derek Young had pointed out he saw the defender, and I'm spacing on his name. He's one of Tech's better defenders, but pointing at the K-State sideline after it happened. But in general, I mean, you see that hit. I think it's a football hit. It's a football hit that's going to be penalized these days, and it was. Again, was it dirty? I don't know. That's kind of a blurred line to me. But they were both pretty excessive, if you want to say it like that. They were both pretty excessive.
I think my issue with it is if you go back and watch 2 plays before that, he hit Skylar Thompson well after the ball was released. The same guy, Rico Jeffers, and he went on a delayed blitz, hit Skylar Thompson late. Should have been a roughing the passer the first time. Official didn't call it. Then 2 plays later, he goes delayed blitz again. The ball's out even sooner on this time. It's a good second and a half after he's released the ball and hits him there and lands on him. I definitely deserve to be ejected for it. I know, John, we probably disagree, and I know others disagree with me on the Khalid Duke play. I thought it was a clean play. He dips his shoulder to get around the edge rush, and his head's down, and the left tackle's got his hands in his backs, and it was late. So it deserved to be a penalty. I didn't think it was dirty because Khalid Duke can't see that the ball is gone when his head's down and he's down to ground level, and it's an unfortunate play that Alec Bowman got hurt on, and it deserved to be a 15-yard penalty, but I don't think there was intent by Khalid Duke there. I think he was making a great pass rushing move, and guys often they get low in that situation when they dip their lead shoulder, their right shoulder, to get below the offensive tackle. And he just made a good move, but then unfortunately he rolled up in the back of his knee, and that stinks. You hate to see that. I thought Bowman actually might come back out. They brought him out in the second half early at halftime to warm up with about 13 minutes before kick in the third quarter. Looked like he just couldn't give it a go, and then we saw him emerge from the locker room in a boot around, I think, maybe the start of the fourth quarter. So it's unfortunate. I mean, Bowman has been banged up throughout his career. He's had a rough go of it, and it does stink to see him go down with another injury there.
Well, a lot of the story, of course, going to be the 2 freshmen on offense, although, man, I tell you, the defense played a pretty good game, even though they kind of lost a little bit of momentum there in the second half. Another great game by Jerron McPherson. But Will Howard and Deuce Vaughn are going to be the story, I think, for everyone following K-State nationally, especially the duo of freshmen. Will Howard, 7 of 12, 173 and a touch, and, of course, that long pass play to Deuce to ice it. But good night, man. Deuce Vaughn, he is I enjoyed the conversation. Most exciting since for him. And holy cow, is he fun to watch. And he's a problem for other teams to attempt to scheme against. And even the Riley Moore play, that play in part happens because they came up to take away Deuce Vaughn, and the tight end's open behind him on the second level. So I think he's going to open up things for other guys. How good is he right now?
I mean, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. He's got 44 touches for 439 yards and 4 touchdowns, I believe it is. It's 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think 4. Through 3 games in his career. I mean, it's literally a first down every time he touches the ball. It's like 9.97 yards per touch, which is insane. And it is now with a couple of games of being a guy that is certainly being identified as the best offensive weapon that you have. And as Cole said against Texas Tech, obviously it is. We heard Matt Wells say as much when he brought him up by name and was the first words out of his mouth, number 22, on the Big 12 teleconference this past week. And they still could not find a way to hold him down. And he had to carry the team today because Skyler, I thought, was in a really nice groove and has been now for a couple of weeks with the offense. But he went out, and there's just only so much you can do with Will because he didn't have spring practice, even though he was here in the spring. And in fall camp, it's not like he's taking number one reps. And I assume for a while there, he was having to beat out Nick Ost. So he's splitting the number two reps there. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is there's just only so much you can throw on that guy's plate when you're talking about offensively being thrust into a game. That's the other part, being thrown into a game, not like they prepared this week for him to be playing. So he's not taking number one reps this past week. So a lot of it was going to be on Deuce Vaughn. And I'm actually surprised that they were able to keep him at 19 touches and still win the game, because I don't know that he's a guy that's ready to take it 30 times per game, even though his body is sturdier than I thought it would be at this point. I thought they did a good job of managing that and still getting the most out of him. And then when it really mattered, I mean, it was just an amazing move. He put on a linebacker at the end of the game with that touchdown to ice it. If I'm a Texas Tech fan, that's a hard one for me to live with, that you're going to blitz and leave a linebacker alone on Deuce Vaughn in that situation. And Will Howard said after the game that he and Deuce had just locked eyes, looked at each other when they saw that matchup. So that was where it was going the whole time. But it worked out for K-State. And again, when he is being singled out on the scouting report, they found ways to consistently get him the ball, and he was still consistently making plays.
Yeah, it was pretty surprising that they went zero coverage with no safety help over the top on that 3rd and 5 play, because I thought K-State would throw it there. They threw it on the 3rd and 5 before to Shabastin Taylor to get the first down, and that shows the confidence that they have in Will Howard, that they're, comfortable with him throwing in a 3rd down situation there. But I think they also recognized K-State's defense was kind of on their heels at that point in the second half. They really didn't want to give the ball back to Texas Tech, and, time wasn't really a factor at that point because Tech can go down the field and score in 30 seconds with as quick as they move with their tempo offense. And so they felt the need like they needed to get first downs, and they threw the ball both times on 3rd down, and they get Deuce Vaughn in space. And I mean, he's incredible. And like you said, John, I mean, Tech was loading the box to take away the running game throughout the second half with Will Howard in at quarterback. They were matching up man coverage. There was one time I remember specifically on a 3rd down, I think in the 3rd quarter, that K-State was in a 3-wide set with a tight end and Briley Moore, and Tech still had 8 guys in the box. I mean, they were just playing man coverage, zero safety help numerous times in that half, and really challenging and daring K-State to throw the ball down the field. And they really didn't, other than the Briley Moore play where they connect and it goes for 66. And I thought that was Will Howard's best throw of the game by far. But, just to get back to Deuce Vaughn, it's just going to be on repeat. I feel like every week it's the same thing over and over again. The kid is incredible. It's remarkable that as a true freshman, he's doing what he's doing. It gets more remarkable each week when he becomes the guy that you would think everybody is targeting as the guy to stop for K-State's offense, and teams are unable to do it. Yesterday, he has his first 100-yard rushing game. I thought he was great in the running game, and they got him on the perimeter. And, that touchdown run where he managed to stay in bounds just shows the incredible balance that he has to not step out there down the sideline. The kid is phenomenal. I mean, everything he does, like you said, John, he averages a first down every touch he gets. And so, I don't know how long he can sustain it. I think they need Skylar Thompson back eventually, because I think we saw yesterday, Will Howard's not quite the same running threat that Skylar Thompson is. He's not as mobile, so he's not as big in the running game, and that'll change how they call plays. I don't think they're going to be able to utilize the QB running game as much, so it's going to become more challenging for K-State to run the ball, because they're taking that away. And we know K-State has struggled a little bit in the running game so far this year with more inexperience on the offensive line. The other aspect of it is with Will Howard now being, your number 2 quarterback and him playing, if Skylar Thompson's unavailable, you're down to him and then Nick Ost as a walk-on as your backup. So you're going to be less reliable to, you don't want to necessarily have Will Howard taking a lot of shots. So that kind of changes the way they're going to call plays, I assume.
Well, and I imagine it'll be a little bit different with him having the full week of reps, which is, a great point by John. But the degree of difficulty goes way up, right? With TCU and Gary Patterson on a full week to scheme against a freshman quarterback. They're going to throw every look in the book at him, a TCU team that just knocks off Texas 33-31. Texas is not back. Come on, Texas. So that's an interesting game. And on the road, too. You're probably helped by the fact that, in weird pandemic year, he's not going to play in front of a very raucous crowd at TCU, but still it's your first chance starting a game for Will Howard. It's on the road, a Big 12 game against a guy known for defense.
Yeah, this game has changed a lot in how it looked based purely on the quarterback situation in the last few weeks, because it was only maybe 3.5 weeks ago, that the belief still was that Max Duggan for TCU was going to potentially have to miss the entire year because of like a heart issue that was found during fall camp. It sounded pretty scary and like it was going to be a long-term thing, but all of a sudden he's back. He came back in their game last week and looked really good. He looked pretty good from what I saw in the Texas game once again. I mean, certainly capable enough. He's a quarterback that makes TCU at least a capable offense, whereas without him, I don't know that TCU really had that. Their problem always has been missing a quarterback, and Duggan, I think, eventually is going to be a really good one. So, he brings that team back up to respectability, and that they're always going to have a very good defense, a very athletic defense, if nothing else. And yes, Gary Patterson is a great defensive mind. So the fact that you're going up against him with a true freshman potentially has changed the complexion of the game big time on that side of the ball. And obviously on the other side of the ball now, K-State's defense has to worry about a lot more with Max Duggan than anybody else that TCU was going to roll out there. So it's a tough game. I mean, we had been talking about this stretch being very manageable and the easiest part of the schedule, and it still really is. I guess I would think, depending on what you're going to say about Texas now, you still have Oklahoma State, Baylor left at the end of the year. I mean, it may wind up looking differently by the end of the year in what I think is going to be a crazy Big 12 season. But for now, this TCU game has definitely gone up a notch or two, perhaps, in terms of difficulty.
If there's a guy that's going to take Deuce Vaughn away, it'll be Gary Patterson. So this is going to be his toughest test by far to see what Deuce can do, especially with Will Howard, a true freshman, probably playing at quarterback. And so this is going to be a really big challenge. I mean, you give Gary Patterson a week to prepare for true freshmen all over the field. It's going to be tough on K-State's offense and K-State's inexperienced offensive line as well. You expect Gary Patterson will probably throw some stunts and twists and different movement up front to try and confuse K-State's offensive line and get some pressure on Will Howard and make him get rid of the ball quickly and maybe force him into some mistakes. So this is going to be a significant test for K-State's offense. You mentioned John Max Duggan being a quarterback. I've just been impressed with how sharp TCU's really looked their first 2 weeks after not getting to play a game when they expected due to cancellations that they had earlier. So their offense looks better than I probably expected. A lot of that is I don't think we knew if Max Duggan would be available this season when he had the heart ailment that was uncovered with the COVID test. So and just to be clear, it was something not COVID related. And now he's back out on the field. He's mobile. He runs the ball well. I think he actually had like a 50-yard run against K-State for a touchdown last year. He can throw it around. And so it's going to be a tough test for K-State's defense as well. I think this is a game that K-State's defense is probably going to have to win, though, and maybe force another couple turnovers. They should get some guys back if things go to plan. I think they'll get some more bodies back from contact tracing for this game now that 2-week period is up. So hopefully you have some more D-backs to choose from, even though the K-State secondary, it's hard to complain about the things we've seen from guys like Echo Boydo stepping in. So this is a big game. I mean, there's no reason why if K-State wins this game, they can't be a legitimate contender to go to the Big 12 championship and play that game in Arlington. So to get off to a 3-0 start, then have a bye, and then get KU, I mean, you're looking at a potential 4-0 start and start talking about playing in Dallas or Arlington. So this would be a significant challenge, but it'll be huge for K-State and TCU.
Yeah, the other thing I worry about with Gary Patterson is the Cooper Beebe injury and whether or not Cooper Beebe is going to be able to play, because Katori Leviston right now is just, frankly, a pretty big step down at tackle if he is out there, and he struggled quite a bit. And if it's going to be either him or Carver Willis, now I think Logan Long hopefully will be back and he could help out there some next week. But you hate, it felt like they had found a pretty good, pretty solid offensive line with Christian Duffy and Cooper Beebe being the tackles for right now. And if it's going to be either a really young guy in Carver Willis or a guy who's still pretty green and struggling right now in Katori Leviston, I mean, that's the type of thing that you worry about what Gary Patterson's going to be able to do and scheme up against.
We know what he's going to do. He's going to bring the heat early and often.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So that's what you'll see. So as you look around the Big 12, I mean, Cole mentions K-State kind of being right in the thick of things. Of course, the national narrative is going to be how much the Big 12 sucks now because Oklahoma's lost twice and Texas has lost, despite the fact that the SEC seems to be fine, even though LSU lost and then Mississippi State lost to Arkansas, but whatever. So it does create a pretty interesting scenario where right now it seems like it's Oklahoma State and maybe everybody else, but Oklahoma State hasn't been wildly impressive in their early games. I mean, they smoked Kansas yesterday, but you kind of expect them to smoke Kansas. This is probably the most wide open Big 12 in a really long time. Your games yesterday, TCU upsets Texas 33-31, Oklahoma State 47 over Kansas. Oklahoma gets upset by Iowa State at blackout night names, which is unfortunate that they couldn't tear down the goalpost with like 15,000 people in the stands, 37-30. And then West Virginia beats Baylor in double overtime, 27-21. So this is, I don't know, some people might think that parity's not fun, but this is really fun Big 12 football to watch right now, at least as a fan.
Well, it annoys me that the national narrative is so much about how bad the Big 12 is, because I will still contend that eventually we are going to see the SEC play out like this in some ways. I mean, Alabama does look head and shoulders above everybody else. But besides that, man, I mean, the other big contenders, like, Florida got pushed pretty hard by Ole Miss in week 1. Georgia was really struggling with Arkansas. I know they did look pretty good last night, but Auburn's on the receiving end of that. I think you're going to see a similar type of thing play out in other conferences, because I think everybody wants to downplay, especially nationally, the real impact of COVID on these games from a week-to-week basis and not being able to have practice. And, teams like Baylor, for instance, who, lost yesterday, but dealing with a new head coach, didn't get spring ball and all these different things that would typically factor in. I think there's a want to just treat everything like totally normal, because there's a fatigue of like analyzing everything through the lens of COVID and saying, well, chalk it up to just being a crazy year. Like, people want more of an explanation than that. But I think it's really going to create a lot of wild upsets throughout the year in college football. I mean, look at what happened to Mississippi State goes and smacks LSU, and then they lost to Arkansas, who was by far the worst team in the SEC last year in week 1 to week 2. So, I mean, I think right now the Big 12 is getting singled out because it started earlier. I mean, the games actually legitimately started earlier, and they did, again, go play those non-conference games, which really put them in a vulnerable state. So is the Big 12 as good as it's been over the last 4 or 5 years? No, mainly because Oklahoma doesn't have an experienced quarterback and is just down. Their offense is down a tick or two. So, yes, I think the league is not quite as good as what it's been, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as it's being made out to be, because I think this is just going to be a weird, crazy year in college football, and we're seeing that take place in the league right now.
The Big 12's being punished because they played a non-conference game, and K-State lost to Arkansas State and Iowa State lost to Louisiana, and then K-State and Iowa State go and beat Oklahoma, right? And so, there's no saying that wouldn't have happened to SEC teams if they played a non-conference game as well. There's a chance they would have had some upsets. I mean, all you have to do is, you look at Oklahoma State. They struggled against Tulsa. Everyone was bringing up the fact that Oklahoma State's not very good. Well, look what Tulsa did last night. Tulsa upset Central Florida, which is number 11 team in the country. Central Florida went on the road and just completely destroyed Georgia Tech just a couple weeks ago. Central Florida is legit. Tulsa's clearly a pretty good team, and Oklahoma State beat them. They didn't look sharp, but they won the game. The Big 12 is being unfairly punished for playing a non-conference game, when other leagues, if they had done the same thing, probably would have had some upsets. And the fact that Texas and Oklahoma aren't as good, no one else can be any good. That's really what the narrative is. If Texas and Oklahoma aren't good, the Big 12's not good. And so it's tiresome. It's fatiguing to have to listen to that. I will say, I mean, I think, you look at a team like Baylor. I think Baylor's a mess right now. Charlie Brewer doesn't look nearly the same as he did last year. They don't have the offensive weapons. I think they're going to struggle. Jarrett Deggy wasn't very good yesterday for West Virginia, even though they came out with the win. This league is wide open. I mean, we already know that Iowa State, obviously they win that game last night, but Iowa State is very beatable as well. Oklahoma State's a game that's very winnable. Texas should be 0-2 in the league. And so it is wide open. I'm not breaking news to anyone on that, but if you're 2-0 off to a 2-0 start, teams like K-State, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State, are really in the driver's seat right now when it comes to playing in the Big 12 title. That all could very easily change. It's a week-to-week thing, but right now you got to feel decent about where you're at. If you're K-State, already having a win against Oklahoma under your belt, playing the rest of the season.
Bring me Farmageddon and Jerry World for the title. I'm in.
Oh my gosh.
Fox would be so upset, but I am in. That would be awesome. Well, to kick things over real quick to a little NFL talk as we get ready to kind of wrap things up. You kind of love the potential for K-State and where that's going, but holy cow, where's the NFL going right now? So you already have a game postponed this weekend. As Tennessee is out with too many COVID positives, so you had to move Tennessee-Pittsburgh. Chiefs get postponed. Cam Newton's on the COVID positive list, as well as the scout team quarterback for the Chiefs. So that game is maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday, maybe not. There was apparently a positive amongst the Saints players, maybe, but then that was potentially a false positive. Like, what is happening right now in the NFL? I think you're going to have to wake up on Sunday morning to see what games are actually going to be on.
Yeah, which is a pretty stark change from what the beginning of the year had been. I mean, it was unbelievable how well things have been going in the NFL, and I think it's, there are a lot of factors at play there as to everybody letting their guard down and getting comfortable. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened with the players, but I think just as fans and media and people who are paying attention to it, they had it nailed down to the point where you were just like, okay, I'm comfortable with this. It's going to happen every single week. It'll be okay, whatever it is. They've got it figured out, and you forget that the virus, still has a mind of its own. And I think there's also at play just the broader societal point of like, we're tired of this. It's been almost 7 months at this point of dealing with it. So there's a general fatigue about it, and people are starting to get more comfortable doing more things, I think, and just saying, hey, screw it, I'm going to live my life. And so when you have that combined with what you saw with the NFL, I think that's why it feels kind of shocking now that this is happening. But, I mean, hey, we saw a lot of this happen at the beginning of the baseball season, and baseball was eventually able to get it figured out. I mean, I think
beginning of college football season too.
Right. And, yes, college football, they've been able to continue to push forward, and there have been some weird things like Memphis played for the first time in almost a month yesterday. So, it's not perfect, but I think we have a track record saying they can get it back on track. They can get these things figured out. I think there will be some things perhaps more difficult about trying to do it with the NFL as opposed to Major League Baseball, because you have to worry about player safety, like the Chiefs situation right now, where you're trying to figure out how to not make them play 3 games in 10 days or whatever ridiculous stat it would be if they played on Tuesday, Sunday, Thursday. So it'll get difficult, and as a Chiefs fan, I worry about what's going to happen there. I am seeing on NFL.com, it's saying sources the game will be played on Monday, which I guess will help, but still, 3 games in 11 days? I mean, I don't love that.
That's a haul.
Yeah, this is concerning. This is definitely concerning, and after we had all just kind of accepted that the NFL was going to be able to do it with no problem.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, I think the NFL is still in pretty good shape. I mean, I would have expected some sort of outbreak to occur on a team by now through 4 weeks. And I think the scary thing is that, when you talk about the Chiefs-Patriots playing tomorrow night on Monday, and I know they had all negative point-of-care tests today and as well yesterday. Everyone tested negative after Cam Newton. The worrisome thing is that Tennessee had 2 more guys test positive again today. They're up to 18. I think over 4 or 5 days now, these guys have been isolated away from each other, and they've had more positive tests just continue to trickle in day by day. So with the Chiefs-Patriots play tomorrow night and everyone tests negative once again, and I'm not a doctor, but you have to worry that some of these guys are just testing negative but still could be carrying the virus, because we've seen that with Tennessee with new guys testing positive 4 or 5 days after exposure. That would be my concern when the Chiefs-Patriots line up to play tomorrow night. But again, hopefully it didn't spread. I mean, it's really hard to figure this thing out, because the Titans played the Vikings last Sunday, and the Vikings continue to have no positive tests from that. And so, football is such a contact sport. You would have to have thought that, someone from the Vikings would have gotten it, if a Tennessee player or coach had it. But so far, so good. And hopefully that continues course. But yeah, again, all things considered, I think they can work their way through this. And, worst case scenario, if they have to, maybe they end up shortening the season by a game or 2 to give some scheduling flexibility. That might be something they have to consider. Hopefully they don't. But I think the NFL will be fine. They'll learn from it. There's a lot of smart people there. Baseball learned from it when people were thinking there was a 5% chance of baseball season being completed. Well, look, they're playing postseason baseball right now, and I don't think most of the country thought they would get to that point early on when the season started. So the NFL is going to be fine, but it is a bummer, and it does create some challenges, and you definitely don't want teams like the Chiefs or anyone playing 10 games or 3 games in 10 days. That becomes an injury liability.
And it's okay to make those claims, Cole. It's pandemic. If you've been watching social media, everyone's a doctor, even even when they're not. So just a quick look at the game. I mean, obviously this one's completely different with no Cam Newton. I mean, regardless of when it's played, you got to like the Chiefs' chances if they're rolling out Brian Hoyer at quarterback or Jarrett Stidham as opposed to Cam, who's probably been one of the best stories in the NFL early on.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, if we're going to talk about just that game specifically, that's obviously changed it a lot, which I'll take it as a Chiefs fan. I'll definitely take it. But also I was really looking forward to the matchup of Cam Newton versus Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's a conundrum for me with the Patriots and how annoyed you've been with Patriots fans over the last 15 or 20 years and how to feel about that team. But I really like Cam, and it's fun to see him playing well. And so I would have really enjoyed watching that game and just seeing another pretty marquee matchup. I mean, you just had Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. Now you get Mahomes versus Cam Newton. It takes away from, some of the marquee value of that game, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, there's no reason to me to say – the Chiefs against anybody really should be an underdog. And I think that, to me, that includes Seattle. Mahomes, I think, is still so far above. I think it's a substantial step above every other quarterback in the league. We definitely saw that with Lamar on Monday night. I think he is still a cut above, and I think that makes a big difference. And right now, I mean, I've said since I saw the Chiefs go play the Texans, there's a chance this team can go undefeated, and I'm still standing by that based on what we've seen so far this year.
John always makes me uneasy and nervous when he's so cocky and confident. It's in my nature. We were texting during the game on Monday night at Baltimore. It's in my nature to be more pessimistic. And so when John's telling me that we've got this as the game started to feel like it might be slipping away due to lost opportunities in my mind, John is trying to calm me down, which actually makes me even more nervous and uneasy. I mean, I just I don't know. And so, again, I obviously this is a break for the Chiefs in all likelihood that Cam Newton's not playing, and they get past this game. Then they've got, I think, the Raiders, which is a very winnable game, obviously. So I would expect them to get off to a 5-0 start, and then they're going to have a really tough test at Buffalo. If they can get past Buffalo, I think you could start to talk undefeated, because then you got the Jets. You don't have a ton of games that are difficult left, other than I think they got to go to New Orleans, but Drew Brees isn't nearly the same anymore. So I don't know if that's as big of a threat. And they got to go to Tampa Bay, but again, I think Tampa Bay has been a little bit underwhelming. I don't think Tom Brady has been that impressive there with the new personnel that they have, and so every game is certainly winnable for the Chiefs. I mean, that's not some breaking news or anything, and I think they'd be the favorite in every game the rest of the season. Buffalo might be, a pretty tight spread, but yeah, I think the Chiefs are in pretty good shape to get that 1 seed. And that was an important win on Monday night against Baltimore, because if you look at Baltimore's schedule, they don't have a tough schedule at all remaining the rest of the way. So you got that tiebreaker over them. You essentially have a 2-game lead. And I don't think we can understate the importance of getting the 1 seed in the NFL this year, when that's the only bye that you get. And home field advantage maybe not as meaningful, but getting that bye certainly is.
Well, the good news, regardless of where you're driving home from, whether it's the lake or whether you're just going to take a nap is your goal for the day, because without Pat's Chiefs, the NFL schedule is garbage today. There are not a bunch of great games, so you're gonna have to stick around till Monday night, maybe for a doubleheader. Falcons Pack is about the best game on the docket with no Chiefs Patriots. So release yourselves into the wild, go get crazy. If you got yard work to do today, today's the day to do it, because it's not an NFL bye week, but it's effectively an NFL bye week this week. So, well, gentlemen, we'll do this again next Sunday. Cats, TCU. A lot of freshmen playing. It'll be probably pretty interesting this week just to with press conferences, things to hear from some of them and hear from coach and see how things are progressing, especially to see what Skylar looks like. But it certainly looks like it's going to be all the underclassmen all the time on Saturday as the Cats get ready to head to Fort Worth.
Yeah, which, I mean, to me, outside of the quarterback thing is fine. I like the fact that they play as many freshmen as they do. I think it helps them recruiting. I think they proved a lot last year. I want to say it was 33 freshmen or true freshmen or redshirt freshmen played in a game last year, and they've continued that this year. Like, hey, if you're good enough to get out there and you're doing the right things, you're going to play. And I mean, that's one thing we haven't really talked about. Like, Deuce Vaughn and Will Howard are both incredibly mature. Just listening to them talk, Deuce over the last few weeks, and Will Howard after the game yesterday, you can tell that those guys are more ready than most freshmen. And it's, just really refreshing after a long time where this stuff just would not happen. We're seeing it all over the place, and I think it's reaping a lot of benefits. A lot, quite obviously, like, where are they at without Deuce Vaughn right now if he's still buried kind of on the depth chart? So I think it's reaping a lot of benefits. I think it will continue to do so moving forward. So even though you want to have everybody healthy, what we're seeing out of some of these guys, and even just younger guys that hadn't played as much, like Echo Boydo, who got thrown in there, I mean, I think it's been really encouraging to see that happen.
Yeah, it helps you build for the future, and you build more depth for the rest of the season. So, you know, you get these guys experience, you get Echo Boydo going, and you get other cornerbacks back from, you know, contact tracing. You just have more depth throughout the roster, not only for this season, but moving forward, and know more on what you have. And you look at Will Howard. I mean, he's going to get some valuable game reps and experience under his belt. And then you hope Skylar Thompson can come back, and you feel good that you have two really good quarterbacks moving forward with some experience. So that could be the bright side of this. If you can get past this, if the Skylar Thompson thing's not a long-term severe issue, maybe he misses a game or two and you can get him back, but you also were able to kind of manage things and get through wins here against TCU and KU, and then get Skylar back while getting Will Howard some valuable experience. So that would be a huge plus.
Well, the attitude certainly has shifted in the last 2 weeks, and we look forward to next week at TCU. You gentlemen have a great weekend, and we'll catch you back here for another Power Cat game to wrap up next week.
You too, Corey.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.